Good afternoon and welcome once again to Fired Up. I'm your host for the show, Bob Irwin. We are coming to you live from the studios of the American Guns and Glory Network here in Las Vegas, Nevada. This show is about guns, related politics, and self-defense issues. Our show is posted, a new show, every Thursday afternoon around 5 o'clock on our website, firedupwithbobirwin.com, and it's heard on radio Saturday mornings, a repeat of the show you're looking at, Saturday mornings on the Nevada Talk Network. You can find them if you check out KELY 1230A or 1230.com for a station in your area. It's on stations all over Nevada, about 12 or 13 stations at the moment, all run at the same time and Saturday at noon. If you have a question or comment about something to do with the show, you can send an email to me at bob@firedupmail.com. That's on the bottom of your screen right now. Or call my office. There's a recorder in that. If you leave a message, I will return your call or your email or whatever within 24 hours generally if you have a question or comment about the show. Questions directed to our guests can generally be referred to that same place, the phone or the email. Most of the guests have their own emails, and my guest today does also. He will give during the show to get a hold of him. There are several hundred defensive uses of firearms every week in the United States, 200 to 300 every week, depending on who's doing the counting. So we pick out a few to use that are educational to people who have a gun in their house or carry one on a concealed permit or so forth. They're picked out because they have an object lesson in them that you can put yourself in the position of the person involved and see what other alternatives he had to keep himself out of jail and out of civil lawsuits if possible. We picked them because they're educational to firearms owners, not to second guess the guy who was there. That's not a good idea normally. We are a nationwide show, so the individual incidents were generally adjudicated under local law. We're using Nevada and California laws. I have a California attorney with me today to look at these cases, but the local jurisdiction prevails. If you have a case you're involved in currently, you need to contact a local criminal defense attorney familiar with the laws in your state. That was easy. My guest today is California and Nevada attorney Donald Green. Welcome to the show one more time, Don. Glad to see you out and about.
Thank you very much.
If you'd give a little bit of your background for our listeners.
Sure. Well, Bob, again, it's an honor to be on your show after several weeks of not being here. My name is Don Green, and I'm a lawyer in California and Nevada, principally based in Las Vegas. The emphasis of my practice is criminal defense with a focus on gun and gun-related issues. We represent firearms dealers, individuals buying and selling firearms, people involved in criminal and civil cases involving firearms, FBI appeals on background checks, and we're actually doing a lot of work involving the ATF and the Nevada Department of Taxation involving firearms dealers. You can reach me at dongreenlaw.com, and our emails are listed in that website, and we always answer all the questions. And probably before the next show, we'll have our new updated cards from the Nevada Department of Public Safety, which shows the latest additions and deletions of all the states in which Nevada honors carry concealed weapons permits from other states, and we'll have that in the next few days. And I'll make sure that if your guests, if your listeners and viewers contact us, we'll make sure to get them their cards as we did last year.
Yeah, that is a important point when you're listening to this show or any shows like it. The law is an ever-evolving thing. Court cases bend it, break it, change it, reword it all the time. And if you got some firearms training about what the law is that you got 6 months ago, it's probably wrong. Things change that fast. So you need to keep up. And Don is really good at doing that. This first story is from WSET, that's the ABC TV 13 in Roanoke, West Virginia. Police responded to a report of a shooting in the area of 12th Street Southwest and Salem Avenue around 6:30 p.m. When they got there, police said they found a juvenile who had been shot in the neck. The officers spoke with the 47-year-old who fired the shot. He was still at the scene. He told officers he had made an arrangement online to meet a 20-year-old to sell the 20-year-old a motorcycle. During their meeting, that 20-year-old was joined by a second 20-year-old and a juvenile. When the 47-year-old seller asked for payment before giving the motorcycle's papers over, the juvenile pulled out a gun and demanded the motorcycle. The seller, who was armed, shot the juvenile in the neck. Emergency responders took the juvenile to the hospital where he was treated for a non-life-threatening injury. The two 20-year-olds were arrested and charged with robbery and taken to the Roanoke City Jail. Charges on the juvenile are pending as this was being written. From a law enforcement standpoint, just to talk about this for 1 second, often when you're confronted by a group, the youngest one in the group is the one carrying the gun. They do that, drug dealers do that commonly, robbers do it commonly, so that knowing that if they're caught with possession of a firearm or carrying a concealed weapon, the juvenile is going to get less jail time. And a lot of them use it as gang initiation type of thing. So when you're confronted by two 20-year-olds and there's a 15-year-old or 13-year-old there, don't just watch the 20-year-olds. The 13-year-old may be the guy that's packing, as he was in this case. What do you think, Don? We've got a guy that fired at a juvenile who was pointing a gun at him.
First of all, we have a situation where, as you have pointed out in your notes, the incident occurred in a constitutional carry state, Virginia. The 47-year-old male, the citizen, was in a place where he had the right to be. You and I have had these, I call them the Craigslist modus operandi robberies. We've had dozens of these.
Yep.
But the big point here is that you, as the citizen and your attorney, must evaluate this shooting by the citizen from the perspective of the citizen at that moment in time. Not from the district attorney's and the police perspective. In case this happened in California, they might try to turn it around on the armed citizen who was actually going to defend himself because he perceived at that moment a firearm being drawn or brandished by the teenager, regardless of his age, even if the gun wasn't real, as you have another example later today. You have to look at it from the perspective, and was that a perception of great bodily injury or death at that moment, and was it reasonable?
Yeah.
I mean, if it was an obvious Nerf gun, you're not going to be able to pull out your firearm. But in this case, if you look at it, he didn't draw his weapon first. He was there legitimately to sell a motorcycle. And when the money, instead of the money being presented, it was a firearm, then it becomes a situation where the armed citizen took appropriate action because his life was in danger, although he hadn't been shot yet. I would say that in Virginia, this case, he's going to be all right.
We're in West Virginia.
West
but that's the
Virginia,
same
excuse
thing.
me.
It's constitutional carry.
Excuse me, in West Virginia, I stand corrected. If it's in California, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Merced County, San Jose, San Diego, there may be a problem for the armed citizen.
Or San Francisco.
Or San
who's simply
Francisco.
going to prison.
Yes.
That's the point of this is that constitutional carry saved this victim's life. We're getting all kinds of stuff about gun laws coming national and this and that, and other states honoring which permit. What we need is national constitutional carry. That if you're not prohibited from having a gun, you can carry one. And that's what the Constitution says. It says keep and bear arms, but that's an argument for the Supreme Court, and they're hearing it almost on a daily basis now. I think now's a good spot. We're going to break for a commercial message. We'll be back in just a moment. Don't go away.
My name is Jerry Creed and I'm a gun trust attorney. If you want to own an NFA firearm, a gun trust is a great way to own it because it allows multiple people to lawfully possess a firearm instead of just a single individual. I have reviewed lots of gun trusts and I have found they often don't include the forms you need to bring people on as trustees and remove them as trustees. In addition, a gun trust will save you the cost of probate and avoid probate, and it can protect your executor and family members. You know, there isn't an element of intent in these laws that affect the NFA firearm possession. So it doesn't matter if your wife didn't intend to sell the gun at a garage sale or yard sale, or your daughter didn't intend to drive the car with the silencer in the trunk. A gun trust is a great way to protect your family members and friends and share in the fun and pleasure of owning NFA weapons. If you want a gun trust done right, remember to trust Jerry.
Hi, now you can get a copy of my recently updated book, The Reality of Armed Self-Defense. This is based on my 40 years experience in evaluating and defending lethal force cases. Learn the rules of using deadly force before you have to guess in the middle of a hostile situation. For Fired Up Special, you can get this book for only $10. If you live outside the first 48, please add appropriate postage. Mail orders can be sent to Bob Irwin, P.O. Box 97413, Las Vegas, Nevada 89193. Thanks for ordering one. And we are back. This next story is out of St. Louis, Missouri on the 21st of May this year. WLTX-TV19 reported an elderly resident was ambushed by 3 young people as he climbed the stairs to his front porch. He was out, he had just gotten out of his car and he was out going up this little flight of stairs, about 6 stairs, to get to his front porch. The whole thing was caught on his Ring doorbell surveillance camera, which looms large in this. The video shows a man in his 80s standing on his front porch when 3 teenagers approach him and point a gun in his direction. He called out to his wife, "Bring out the gun." And the 3 suspects ran off in the direction of Halliday and Compton streets. A neighbor next door said it's like a kick in the stomach in a way. It doesn't necessarily change the way that I feel like I'm going to be out of my neighborhood because things like this happen in St. Louis, but this is a real bummer. The video clearly shows a man in his 80s standing on his front porch when 3 teenagers approach him and point a gun in his direction. St. Louis police told him they would be stepping up patrols in the neighborhood. That's a solution, I guess. The threat of armed defense puts criminals to flight. A lot of them aren't afraid of the legal system. They're not afraid of much of anything because they're planning for their future life is what they're going to do next week or tomorrow. And the video that this guy got will certainly lead to some arrests. The home doorbell type video adds so much to the proof of reasonable self-defense. And the warning worked. All he had to do in this case was holler at his wife, "Bring the gun," and they turned and took off. This is a perfect use of self-defense. Nobody shot, video recorded. Had there been shots fired, this guy is on incredibly good grounds being able to show what was going on. Had they not fled immediately, which showed a lot more common sense than most bad guys have. This is kind of a commercial for the Ring doorbells, and folks, they work. We've seen these in a lot of cases coming over our desks here in the last 2 years or so. What do you think, Don?
You're absolutely correct. With the video which we have in this instance, the district attorney and the police would be hard-pressed to charge the citizen with the threat to juveniles. Now remember, in Nevada, if you threaten the life or threaten great bodily injury to juveniles, you get an enhanced sentence rather than if you threaten your next door neighbor who's an adult. But I think that they'd be hard pressed to do that. It's a good example, which you taught ever since I took your concealed weapons classes right after the Last Supper. You don't have to shoot. And here's a good example of, honey, get the gun. But even if you have the gun, you still don't have to shoot. The third point is that we hear in the concealed weapons classes, we see in the magazines, we see in the videos, we see in all kinds of training seminars, the two concepts of the Castle Doctrine and stand your ground, which are two distinct legal and factual concepts, but sometimes they merge. In this case, citizen is walking up the porch. He's not quite in his house, but the Castle Doctrine would protect his yard. But then he's protected in that respect. But also stand your ground because he is in a place where he is lawfully authorized to be. That is, in his front yard or in the porch, not quite in the house. So even under those two concepts for defense, I think this man would win, perhaps even in California. Now, if the wife brought the weapon out and then he used it, there would be a problem in California because can't take a gun to a gunfight. And there was no, although there may be a threat to him with the use of a firearm, nobody shot. But the district attorneys in the coastal counties in California really don't care sometimes.
Yeah, this circumstance is an excellent example of what we're talking about when we say the law varies from here to there. In Nevada, we have a stand your ground statute. It says that you have no duty to retreat if you're standing in a place where it's legal for you to be. So that covers your front porch and your front yard and all sorts of places, your car. The states that have a castle doctrine based on the comment that a man's home is his castle and nobody can enter, that's why you need a search warrant to go in somebody's house if you're a cop. You don't need a search warrant to look into his yard because his yard is there for plain view. The Castle Doctrines vary dramatically from state to counties to cities, and whether it covers your front yard. We did a case several weeks ago where a guy shot, I forget what state he was in now, but it mattered to the case. He was standing on his front porch. He got into a shouting match with some guys who were on the sidewalk. They threatened him. They started to walk onto his property, and from the front porch, he fired at them. And it turned out that state's Castle Doctrine says defense within your residence, meaning not the front porch. He was outside of his front door and got into a tremendous legal case and then a lawsuit, of course. It varies dramatically. So you need to find the statutes in the states you live in and see what they are. And this is not a joke, meaning see what they are this week. Court cases bend castle doctrines all the time. And if you don't keep up by reading the law review that says this, that, or the other thing, you can't keep up. Remember the theory that ignorance of the law is no excuse. You didn't know it didn't cover when you were standing in your garage, which is detached. And if the garage is attached to the house, then it does cover it and so forth. There are states like that it matters whether there's a walkway between the garage and the house. And you really have to be a criminal defense lawyer in that state to understand what's going on with these. In this case, now, there we are. The last one, the third story I want to talk about is in friendly Chicago. Setting world records for shootings and murders and so forth and so on, it seems like every single week. And I remember when we started talking about Chicago one time, I was applauding one of the area police chiefs in the part of Chicago when he started program. They ran a computer simulator to look for people likely to be shot. And it picked out known gangbangers, or plus the neighborhood they lived in, plus if that gang had a rivalry with another gang and this and everything. And they picked out people who were likely not to be the shooters, likely to be killed in a gang shooting. And they then went around and snatched them all up over the 3-day weekend and put them all in jail. And their shootings dropped that weekend to essentially zero. And I thought, wow, you know, it's backwards. They're regulating the targets rather than the guns. And of course, the ACO jumped on that immediately and sued everybody involved and the police commissioner, and he had to eventually apologize to the little gangsters that he put in jail, that by the statistics, it saved about 30 of them from being shot and about 6 or 8 of them from being killed. And yet, he got in trouble. They collected some damages from the police department, as I recall. Just amazing. So this is Chicago, where it is really difficult to get a permit. By court orders now, they have to issue them. By a court ruling. They're still dragging their feet a lot, but some people actually go through the whole 2-year process now and get their FOID card, and then their training, and then their proof of this and that and the other thing, and actually get a permit. And in this case, this was on June 4th, a few days ago. In Chicago, the Sun-Times Media reported it, which is Fox News TV 32 also. A 63-year-old man shot an attempted armed robber Monday evening in the South Chicago neighborhood. The man was walking with another person about 6:19 p.m. in the 8,000 block of South Oglesby. A 16-year-old boy and 3 accomplices pulled out weapons and demanded their property, their wallets and their watches and so forth, according to Chicago police. It turned out the intended victim had a valid Illinois concealed carry permit along with all the other required documentation. This 63-year-old pulled out his own gun and shot the boy in his knee, at which point the other suspects ran off. Tra-la. The boy's weapon in this case turned out to be a replica handgun, which we were referring to this case earlier on a little bit. I noted already before I look at the comments that I wrote, Chicago is under a court order to issue CCW permits, and more citizens are going through this whole rigmarole to get them. I understand it still takes about 2 years.
It's a very lengthy process,
yeah.
yes.
And you can be turned down, and then they don't tell you why, and then you have to sue them to find out why. And I mean, it's just ridiculous. Like buying a machine gun in California. Not impossible, just not practical. The fact the robber's firearm is not real has no consideration in this case whatever. And I'm going to let you rattle on from there.
Okay, let's take that point right there. Will the district, let's go to California. Let's transfer this case to California. Will the district attorney try to make something out of the fact that these young people, or at least one of them, had a replica firearm? Answer, yes. They will try to say that there should have been some other actions to try to see if the weapon worked. Take a look at it. Try to become some kind of familiar, try to make it out so that the citizen must be some kind of instantaneous firearms expert. So that's the point. It depends on where you are. What's interesting here is that the armed citizen, presumably carrying a concealed weapon, carrying it as concealed, as he should be in Illinois, is walking. So is he walking in a place where he's legally authorized to be? The answer is yes. Goes back to the stand your ground concept. The stand your ground concept is not fixed as to a location. So you can claim stand your ground although you are presently mobile. You're walking, but you're in an area.
Doesn't mean you're standing still.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. You did not cross over the line into a military installation where it would be illegal. You did not break into the police impound yard. You're walking in a place where you're legally authorized to do, and you're minding your own business. So the stand your ground concept is fluid. It depends, and this is what I would argue if I was defending the armed citizen. And when you couple that with the fact that when the perpetrator pulls out what appears to be a firearm, go back to the example earlier today, and this example is that you must evaluate the case from the perspective of the citizen at that moment in time. And you and I know that these shootings take milliseconds. It's not like on TV where somebody falls, draws the weapon in slow motion and fires, and you see the bullet actually traveling from the muzzle in slow motion and the powder and all this noise. You don't see that. These things happen. 3 seconds, 3 feet, 3 shots, average concealed weapon shooting in the United States. But it's the job of the defense attorney and your jurisdiction. If you have this situation where you got this, you need to break it down into milliseconds, tighten up the time, compress the time. The DA's job is to expand the time and to show that you may have had some alternative, like you could have ran, you could have retreated in some jurisdictions where it's required, but not in Nevada. California, this is going to be somewhat nebulous, but I still think you might be okay in California under these facts, assuming that you had a very rarely granted concealed weapons permit.
I would think so too. We have a general kind of thing in the law, most any place you go, that if the bad guy attempts to convince you that your life is in danger, you're permitted to believe him. I mean, commonly we have the guy that's got his finger in his jacket pocket and he walks into a bank and points his jacket pocket. That is an armed robbery. If the person tries to make you believe your life is in danger, you're certainly allowed to believe him.
Yes.
And as Don said, unless it's a Nerf gun or something that is so obviously not, and the red muzzles and crud mean absolutely nothing anymore. If you get one of those, trust me, we know all about bad guys painting their guns red, painting the muzzles red, so that cops, when they catch them, will hesitate to fire. They do that all the time. I mean, you're dealing with two sides here, and the other side is actively trying to make it so you have to make a mistake.
Yes.
This guy is absolutely right, and under current rulings in Chicago, he's going to be all right. I really believe. We're gonna wrap this show up. Our new website is up. It's at firedupwithbob.com. It contains the recent shows. We're getting the older shows put up bit by bit. We're broadcasting now in high def, and the older shows are in standard definition, I guess, or non-high def, whatever you call it.
It's still good.
Old style, but we can't broadcast them compatible with this, so we've got to do something with them to get them up online. There's about 8 or 9 shows online now at that website. The commercials keep us on the air, so please patronize our sponsors, especially if you want to buy one of those books from that sponsor. We'll be back next Thursday here on our website and on YouTube at the moment, on the American Guns and Glory Network also. When you click on those, you can subscribe. In either case, there's a button for subscribe, and they will send you the shows automatically a day or two after they go on the air. And don't forget, we're on Nevada Talk Network if you want to listen to the radio. That is Saturdays at noon. Check out Nevada Talk Network for their placements. Thank you for supporting Fired Up. And we'll be back next week. Good evening.